This is part 3 of a reading of Plato's Timaeus, translated by Thomas Taylor. We continue with the speech of Timaeus. But time was generated together with the universe, that being produced together, they might together be dissolved, if any dissolution should ever happen to these. And time was generated according to the exemplar of an eternal nature, that this world might be the most similar possible to such a nature. For its exemplar is permanent being through the whole of eternity. But the universe alone was generated, is, and will be through the whole of time. After this manner, therefore, and from such a dianoetic energy of divinity about the generation of time, that he might give birth to its flowing subsistence, he generated the sun and moon, and the 5 other stars which are denominated planets, for the purpose of distinguishing and guarding the numbers of time. But the divinity, as soon as he had produced the bodies of these stars, placed them, being 7 in number, in the 7 circulations formed by the revolution of the nature distinguished by difference. The moon, indeed, he fixed in the first circulation about the earth, the sun in the second above the earth, the star called Lucifer, and that which is sacred to Mercury, in circulations revolving with a swiftness equal to the sun, to whom at the same time they are allotted a contrary power. In consequence of which these stars, the sun, Lucifer, and Mercury, mutually comprehend and are mutually comprehended by each other in a similar manner. But with respect to the other stars, if anyone should think proper to investigate their circulations, and through what causes they are established, the labor would be greater than that of the discourse itself, for the sake of which they were introduced. An accurate discussion, therefore, of these particulars may perhaps be undertaken by us hereafter, if convenient leisure should fall to our lot. When, therefore, each of the natures necessary to a joint fabrication of time had obtained a local motion adapted to its condition, and their bodies became animals through the connecting power of vital bonds, they then learned their prescribed order, that according to the oblique revolution of the circle of difference, which moves in subjection to the circle of sameness, these orbs should, by their revolution, partly form a more ample and partly a more contracted circle. and that the orb which formed a lesser circle should revolve swifter, but that which produced a greater more slow. But that in consequence of the motion of the circle of sameness, the orbs, which circulate most swiftly, comprehending other orbs as they revolve, should themselves appear to be comprehended by the revolution of the more slow. But all these circles revolve with a spiral motion, because they are agitated at one and the same time in two contrary directions. And in consequence of this, the sphere endued with the slowest revolution is nearest to that to which its course is retrograde, and which is the swiftest of all. And that these circles might possess a certain conspicuous measure of slowness and swiftness with reference to each other, and that the motion of the 8 circulations might be manifest, the divinity enkindled a light which we now denominate the sun in the second revolution from the earth, that the heavens might become eminently apparent to all things, and that such animals might participate of number as are adapted to its participation, receiving numerical information from the revolution of a nature similar and the same. From hence, therefore, night and day arose, and through these revolving bodies the period of one most wise circulation was produced. And month, indeed, was generated, when the moon, having run through her circle, passed into conjunction with the sun. But year, when the sun had completely wandered round his orb. As to the periods of the other stars, they are not understood except by a very few of mankind, nor do the multitude distinguish them by any peculiar appellation, nor do they measure them with relation to each other regarding the numbers adapted to this purpose. Hence, it may be said they are ignorant that the wanderings of these bodies are in reality time, as these wanderings are endued with an infinite multitude and an admirable variety of motions. But it is easy to conceive that a perfect number of time will then accomplish a perfect year, when the 8 circulations, concurring in their courses with each other, become bounded by the same extremity, being at the same time measured by the circle subsisting according to sameness. But the stars, whose revolutions are attended with a procession through the heavens, were generated that the whole of this visible animal, the universe, might become most similar to the most perfect intelligible animal from an imitation of a perpetual nature. And indeed, the artificer fabricated other forms, as far as to the generation of time, according to the similitude of the world's exemplar. But as the universe did not yet contain all animals in its capacious receptacle, in this respect it was dissimilar to its exemplar. Its artificer, therefore, supplied this defect by impressing it with forms according to the nature of its paradigm. Whatever ideas, therefore, intellect perceived by the dianoetic energy in animal itself, such and so many he conceived it necessary for the universe to contain. But these ideas are four. One, the celestial genus of gods; another, winged and air-wandering; a third, the aquatic form; and a fourth, that which is pedestral and terrene. The idea, therefore, of that which is divine, or the inerratic sphere, he for the most part fabricated from fire, that it might be most splendid and beautiful to behold. And as he meant to assimilate it to the universe, he rendered it circular, placed it in the wisdom of the best nature, ordered it to become the attendant of that which is best, and gave it a circular distribution about the heavens, that it might be a true world, adorned with a fair variety in its every part. But he adapted to each of the divine bodies two motions, one, by which they might revolve in same according to same, by always cogitating the same things in themselves about same; the other, through which they might be led with an advancing motion from the dominion of the same and similar circulation. He likewise rendered them immovable and stable as to the other five motions, that each of them might become in an eminent degree the best. And on this account such of the stars as are inerratic were generated, which are divine animals. And in consequence of this, always abide, revolving in that which is same. But the stars which both revolve and at the same time wander in the manner we have described above were produced next to these. But he fabricated the earth, the common nourisher of our existence, which being conglobed about the pole extended through the universe, is the guardian and artificer of night and day, and is the first and most ancient of the gods which are generated within the heavens. But the most harmonious progressions of these divinities, their concursions with each other, the revolutions and advancing motions of their circles, how they are situated with relation to each other in their conjunctions and oppositions, whether direct among themselves or retrograde, at what times and in what manner they become concealed, and again emerging to our view cause terror, and exhibit tokens of future events to such as are able to discover their signification. Of all this, to attempt an explanation, without inspecting the resemblances of these divinities, would be a fruitless employment. But of this enough, and let this be the end of our discourse concerning the nature of the visible and generated gods. But to speak concerning the other demons, and to know their generation is a task beyond our ability to perform. It is therefore necessary in this case to believe in ancient men, who, being the progeny of the gods, as they themselves assert, must have a clear knowledge of their parents. It is impossible, therefore, not to believe in the children of the gods, though they should speak without probable and necessary arguments. But as they declare that their narrations are about affairs to which they are naturally allied, it is proper that, complying with the law, we should assent to their tradition. In this manner, then, according to them, the generation of these gods is to be described. That Ocean and Tethys were the progeny of heaven and earth, that from hence Phorcys, Saturn, and Rhea, and such as subsist together with these, were produced, that from Saturn and Rhea, Jupiter, Juno, and all such as we know are called the brethren of these descended, and lastly, others which are reported to be the progeny of these. When therefore all such gods as visibly revolve, and all such as become apparent when they please, were generated, the artificer of the universe thus addressed them: Gods of gods, of whom I am the demiurgus and father. Whatever is generated by me is indissoluble, such being my will in its fabrication. Indeed, everything which is bound is dissoluble. But to be willing to dissolve that which is beautifully harmonized and well composed is the property of an evil nature. Hence, so far as you are generated, you are not immortal, nor in every respect indissoluble. Yet you shall never be dissolved, nor become subject to the fatality of death. My will being a much greater and more excellent bond than the vital connectives with which you were bound at the commencement of your generation. Learn, therefore, what I now say to you, indicating my desire. 3 genera of mortals yet remain to be produced. Without the generation of these, therefore, the universe will be imperfect, for it will not contain every kind of animal in its spacious extent. But it ought to contain them, that it may become sufficiently perfect. Yet if these are generated and participate of life through me, they will become equal to the gods. That mortal natures, therefore, may subsist, and that the universe may be truly all, convert yourselves, according to your nature, to the fabrication of animals, imitating the power which I employed in your generation. And whatever among these is of such a nature as to deserve the same appellation with immortals, which obtains sovereignty in these, and willingly pursues justice, and reverences you, of this I myself will deliver the seed and beginning. It is your business to accomplish the rest, to weave together the mortal and immortal nature, by this means fabricating and generating animals, causing them to increase by supplying them with aliment, and receiving them back again when dissolved by corruption. Thus spoke the Demiurgus. And again into the same crater in which, mingling, he had tempered the soul of the universe, he poured, mingling, the remainder of the former mixture. In a certain respect, indeed, after the same manner, yet not similarly incorruptible according to the same, but deficient from the first in a second and third degree. And having thus composed the universe, he distributed souls equal in number to the stars, inserting each in each, and causing them to ascend as into a vehicle. He pointed out to them the nature of the universe, and announced to them the laws of fate, showing them that the first generation, orderly distributed to all, was one, lest any particular soul should be allotted a less portion of generation than another. But when he had disseminated them through the several instruments of time adapted to each, he declared to them it was necessary that an animal, the most religious of all others, should make its appearance. But as the human nature is twofold, he showed them that the more excellent kind was that which would afterwards be called man. And as souls are from necessity engrafted in bodies, and as something exceeds to and something departs from such bodies, he declared to them that, in the first place, one connate sense, produced by violent passions, was necessary to all, and in the second place, love mingled with pleasure and grief. That after these, fear and anger were necessary, with whatever else is either consequent to these or naturally discordant from a contrary nature. That such souls as subdue these would live justly, but such as are vanquished by them unjustly. And again, that he who lived well during this proper time of his life should, again returning to the habitation of his kindred star, enjoy a blessed life. But that he whose conduct was depraved should, in his second generation, be changed into the nature of a woman. That both these, at the expiration of 1,000 years, should return to the allotment and choice of a second life, each soul receiving a life agreeable to its choice. That in this election, the human soul should pass into the life of a brute, and that in case the inclination to evil should not even then cease, but the defilement of vice remain according to a similitude of the mode of generation, then the soul should be changed into the nature of a brute correspondent to its disposition, and that it should not be freed from the allotment of labors till, following the revolution of that same and similar nature contained in its essence, it vanquishes those abundantly turbulent affections, tumultuous and irrational, adhering to it afterwards from fire, water, air, and earth, and returns to the first and best disposition of its nature. When he had instructed souls in all these particulars, that he might be in no respect the cause of the future evil of such, he disseminated some of them into the earth, others into the moon, and others into the remaining different instruments of time. But after this semination, he delivered to the junior gods the province of fabricating mortal bodies and generating whatever else remained necessary to the human soul, and gave them dominion over everything consequent to their fabrications. He likewise commanded them to govern as much as possible in the best and most beautiful manner the mortal animal, that it might not become the cause of evil to itself. At the same time, he who orderly disposed all these particulars remained in his own accustomed abiding habit. But in consequence of his abiding, as soon as his children understood the order of their father, they immediately became obedient to this order, and receiving the immortal principle of mortal animal, in imitation of their artificer, they borrowed from the world the parts of fire and earth, water and air, as things which they should restore back again, and conglutinated the received parts together, not with the same indissoluble bonds with which they themselves participated, but gave them a tenacious adherence from thick-set nails, invisible through their smallness, fabricating the body of each one from the composition of all, and binding the circulations of the immortal soul in the influxive and effluxive nature of body. But these circulations being merged in a profound river, neither govern nor are governed, but hurry and are hurried along with violence, in consequence of which the whole animal is indeed moved, yet in a disorderly manner, since from every kind of motion its progression is fortuitous and irrational. For it proceeds backwards and forwards to the right and the left, upwards and downwards, and wanders every way according to the 6 differences of place. For though the inundating and effluxive waves pour along with impetuous abundance, which afford nutrition to the animal, yet a still greater tumult and agitation is produced through the passions arising from external impulsions, and this either when the body is disturbed by the sudden incursion of external fire, or by the solidity of earth, or receives an injury from the whirling blasts of the air. For from all these, through the medium of the body. Various motions are hurried along and fall with molestation on the soul. But on this account all these were afterwards, and are even now denominated senses. And these indeed, both at first and at present, are the sources of an abundant and mighty motion, in conjunction with that perpetually flowing river, moving and vehemently agitating the circulations of the soul, every way fettering the revolution of the nature characterized by sameness, through flowing in a contrary direction and restraining its energies by their conquering and impetuous progressions. But they agitate and tear in pieces the circulation of the nature distinguished by difference. Hence, they whirl about with every kind of revolution, each of the three intervals of the double and triple, together with the mediums and conjoining bonds of the sesquitertian, the sesquialter, and the sesquioctave ratios, which cannot be dissolved by anyone except the artificer by whom they were bound. And besides this, they induce all the fractures and diversities of circles which it is possible to effect, so that, scarcely being connected with each other, they are borne along indeed, yet in an irrational manner, at one time in a contrary, at another time in an oblique, and then again in a resupine situation. Just as if any one, in an inverted position, should fix his head on the earth and raise his feet on high. For in such a situation, both the inverted person and the spectators would mutually imagine the right-hand parts to be on the left, and the left to be on the right. So with respect to the circulations of the soul, the very same affections, and others of a similar kind, vehemently take place, and hence, when this is the case, if anything external occurs, characterized by the nature of same or different, they denominate things the same with, or different from, others in a manner contrary to the truth. Hence they become false and destitute of intelligence, nor is any revolution to be found among them in such a situation which energizes with the authority of a ruler and chief. But when certain senses borne along externally strike against the soul and attract the whole of its receptacle, then the circulations which are in reality in subjection appear to have dominion. And hence, in consequence of all these passions, the soul becomes insane at present, and was so from the first period of her being bound in a mortal body. However, when the river of increase and nutrition flows along with a more gentle and less abundant course, the circulations, being again restored to tranquility, proceed in their proper path. In process of time, become more regular and steady, and pass into a figure accommodated to their nature. Hence, in this case, the revolutions of each of the circles becoming direct, and calling both same and different by their proper appellations, they render the being by whom they are possessed, prudent and wise. If anyone therefore receives a proper education, in conjunction with convenient nutriment, such a one will possess perfect health, and will every way avoid the most grievous disease. But when this is neglected by any individual, such a one, proceeding along the path of life in a lame condition, will again pass into Hades, imperfect and destitute of intelligence. These are particulars, however, which happen posterior to the production of mankind. But it is our business at present to discourse more accurately concerning the first composition of our nature, and to show, in the first place, from assimilative reasons, through what cause and providence of the gods the several members of the body were accommodated to the several employments of the soul. In the first place, then, the gods bound the two divine circulations of the soul in a spherical body, in imitation of the circular figure of the universe. And this part of the body is what we now denominate the head, a most divine member and the sovereign ruler of our whole corporeal composition through the decree of the gods, who considered that it would participate of all possible motions. Lest, therefore, the head, by rolling like a cylinder on the earth, which is distinguished by all various heights and depths, should be unable to pass over its inequalities and asperities, the gods subjected this upright figure of the body as a pliable vehicle to the head. Hence, in consequence of the body being endued with length, they extended four naturally flexible members, divinity fabricating a progression through which the body might apprehend any object, might receive a stable support, and might be able to pass through every place, bearing on high the head, our most divine and sacred habitation. For this purpose, therefore, they furnished us with legs and hands. And as the gods considered that the anterior parts are more honorable and adapted to rule than the posterior, they gave us a motion for the most part consisting of a forward progression. Beside this, it was requisite that the anterior parts of our body should be divided from each other and be dissimilar. And on this account they first placed about the cavity of the head the face, fixed in it organs subservient to all these providential energies of the soul, and determined that the natural government of man should consist in this anterior part of the body. But they fabricated the luciferous eyes, the first of all the corporeal organs, binding them in the face on the following account. Of that fire which does not burn indeed, but which comprehends our proper diurnal light, the gods fabricated the orbs of the eyes. For the fire contained within our body, and which is the genuine brother of this diurnal fire, they caused to flow through the eyes with smoothness and collected abundance, condensed indeed in the whole, but especially in the middle of these lucid orbs, so as that the more dense fire might remain concealed within the recesses of the eyes, and the pure might find a passage and fly away. When therefore the diurnal light subsists about the effluxive river of the sight, then, similar concurring and being mingled with similar, one domestic body is constituted according to the direct procession of the eyes, and this too in that part where the internally emitted light resists that which is externally adduced. But the whole, becoming similarly passive through similitude, when it either touches anything else or is itself touched by another, then the motion produced by this contact, diffusing itself through the whole body of the eye as far as to the soul, causes that sensation which we denominate sight. But when this kindred fire departs into night, the conjunct on being dissolved, sight loses its power. For in this case, proceeding into a dissimilar nature, it is changed and becomes extinct. Since it is by no means connate with the proximate surrounding air, which is naturally destitute of fire, hence it ceases from seeing, and besides this becomes the introducer of sleep. For the gods fabricated the nature of the eyelids as a salutary guardian of the sight, that these being compressed, the inward fiery power of the eye might be restrained from any further emission, that besides this they might sprinkle over and equalize the eye's internal motions, and that when equalized, rest might be produced. But when much rest takes place, sleep attended with few dreams is produced. On the contrary, if certain more vehement motions remain, then such as is the nature of these relics, and the places in which they were produced, such and so many will be the similar phantasms within, and of which we shall possess the remembrance when we are externally roused. But with respect to the images produced in mirrors and all such things as are visible in that which is apparent and smooth, there is nothing in these difficult of solution. For from the communication of the external and internal fire with each other, and from that fire which subsists about the smooth body and becomes abundantly multiplied, all such appearances are necessarily produced as take place when the fire of the eyes mingles itself with the fire diffused about the smooth and splendid object of vision. But the right-hand parts appear to be the left, because a contact takes place between the contrary parts of the sight and the contrary parts of the object, different from the accustomed mode of perception. On the contrary, the right hand appears on the right, and the left hand on the left, when mingled light leaps forth, together with that with which it is mingled. When the smoothness of the mirrors receives this here and there in an elevated manner, it repels the right-hand part of the sight to the left of the mirror, and the left to the right. But if the mirror is turned according to the length of the countenance, it causes the whole face to appear resupine, by repelling the downward part of the splendor towards the upward part, and again the upper towards the downward part. All such particulars as these, therefore, are but causal assistants, which the divinity employed as subservient to the rendering the idea of that which is best as far as possible complete. But the multitude are of opinion that these are not causal assistants, but the real causes of all things. I mean, such things as are capable of giving cold and heat, rarity and density, with whatever produces such like affections. But it is incapable of possessing reason and intellect. For soul must be considered as the only thing among beings by which intellect can be possessed. And this is invisible. But fire and water, air and earth are all of them visible bodies. It is, however, necessary that the lover of intellect and science should explore the first causes of prudent nature, and that he should consider such things as are moved by others, and at the same time necessarily give motion to other things, as nothing more than secondary causes. Hence, it is proper that we should speak concerning both kinds of causes, separately of such as fabricate things beautiful and good in conjunction with intellect, and of such as, being left destitute of wisdom, produce each particular in a causal and disorderly manner. Concerning the second causes of the eyes, therefore, which contribute to the possession of the power they are now allotted, what has been already said is sufficient. But the greatest employment of the eyes with respect to the use for which they were bestowed on us by the divinity, we shall now endeavor to explain. For in my opinion, the sight is the cause of the greatest emolument to us on the present occasion. Since what we are now discoursing concerning the universe could never have been discovered without surveying the stars, the sun, and the heavens. But now, from beholding day and night, we are able to determine by arithmetical calculation the periods of months and years, to acquire a conception of time, and to scrutinize the nature of the universe. But from all this we obtain the possession of philosophy, a greater good than which never was, nor ever will be bestowed by the gods on the mortal race. And this is what I call the greatest benefit of the eyes. But why should I celebrate other particulars of less consequence, which he who is not a philosopher, since destitute of sight, may attempt to explore, but will explore in vain? By us, indeed, it is asserted that divinity bestowed sight on us for this purpose, that on surveying the circulations of intellect in the heavens, we may properly employ the revolutions of our dianoetic part, which are allied to their circulations, and may recall the tumultuous motions of our discursive energies to the orderly processions of their intellectual periods. And that besides this, by learning these and participating right reason according to nature, and imitating the revolutions of divinity which are entirely inerratic, we may give stability to the wanderings of our dianoetic energy. Here will end the third part of our reading of Plato's Timaeus. This has been a reading of the translation by Thomas Taylor and the reading by William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy.